In this video help, we're going to be covering some information in addition that is used in the advanced calendar. What we're going to do is we're going to go into the actual editing screen for this record, and I want to point out we haven't covered this where the customer and customer company are included. I'm going to spell out what the information is. Basically, when you come into the record and you create the title and the balance of the information and set your different calendars that are required, one of the things you're going to be doing is going to look at your current records that are in descending order, so you have the newest records always at the top of the screen, and these are things that are scheduled within all the records for all of the clients. Now, in the back end of the application, these will be specifically for the current client you're selecting. So what you're doing here in this record is you're going to be going and setting up the customer in the drop-down list. And what it's going to do, it's going to list all the customers in alphabetical order. If you're wanting to find a specific record, what you can do is bring up the keyboard and tap on the letter that you're specifically looking for. Now, in the desktop and cloud version of this application, all you have to do is type maybe the first 2 or 3 characters, and what it'll do is it'll reduce the list down to only those particular clients that are available in that group. The next thing you would do after you pick the client, in this case I'm going to repeat what's already in there, this would normally be blank, it's going to go to the company. And if there's a customer company, for example, it would be in here like Smith Cleaners Inc. That would have been put in here. When you pick Mary Smith, it would be Mary Smith would be dropped in there, but it would be Smith Cleaners Inc. in the back end of the application. The next thing, as we put in there before, was you can put a custom property in. For example, if I put pending in here, I can also put in there something about pending. Callback, for example, would be a situation where somebody had made a scheduled appointment and yet they didn't show up, so you're going to call them back to make sure or verify that they are going to be coming. Now, once we have this information available in the record, we're going to be closing this record. And then another thing you need to be aware of as you're creating new records, if the current client is not in the system, you have to add them prior to selecting them in the back end of the application. And the way you do this is if, say for example, I created this record and the person that is going to be the appointment for this is not yet in the application, the first thing you need to do is go to your App Navigator and go back to the customer booking area. And in this area, what you're going to do is you're going to click on Add a New Record, and you're going to indicate the information that is required for your business in here in this location. Now in this case, you can see where we have the company information here and then the individual who is the contact person in this area. You can also add, and let's go over to a record that has data in it. If you tap on anywhere over in this record, it'll bring up individual records. This is a select portal for all the people that are currently in the application, and they're in their alphabetical order. And what you would do is go ahead and tap on the one you want to view. And if they don't exist in here, like I said, you add a new record and then fill in the fields. Now in this case, you can see the basic information, which is including address, name, and so forth, phone. And then if it's a company related also, where it's billed through a company and the company is going to be part of the process, you would put in the company name and the information for the company and contact information. If it's a company, you can also add the URL for their business, and they would have that. And then you can add comments as far as the comments for the individual client specific to that client and the usage of that client's information as far as how or what you need to keep in there that is in addition to the information we've listed here. Now over on the side over here, you'll see they have a thing called UDF fields. These are user-defined fields, and what does that mean? It means that if you put a title field in the top and then in the lower grayer area down here, you put the data narrative that you want to put in there. This can give you an infinite number of additional fields that are not added over here on this side, so you can virtually have any kind of data over here you want to that is going to assist you in working with this client. For example, say they had a couple of dogs, a bird, and a cat, and they all were all brought to your business for service. You would put all those individual cats and dogs and birds and stuff in this area, and that way you would have their age, their name, the type of dog they are. And in this particular case, you can put anything you want in the title field. You could put in there, for example, if the dog had some kind of ailments, maybe they have arthritis as a dog in their legs, and you could put in there has arthritis, left leg, da 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 da, anything in there. Now this can be one block of information about one animal if you want it to be, or these can be individual fields with a title and an input specifically aligned to maybe something general for all the different animals that are brought in that you want to keep in here. So this gives you an ability to add additional information. Now what we're going to do in this record is we're going to go ahead and do some of the tabs. The tabs in this record are also individual information that is in addition to the general information. Before we do that though, I want to point out creation date is added when this record is created as a new record. It'll also put the time in there. If you modify the record by changing any of the field information, it will go ahead and also change and show the last date it was last modified and the time. You can also over here get a list of who the people are as far as who are making inputs into the records. So if they are modified, the last person that did anything in this record could put their information in there. One of the things you'll notice here is that it says booked by, and when it says booked by, if you tap on that, it'll bring up this list here. And the reason this is in here is that in the iPod, iPhone world, everything is on a scroller, and you have to pick from a scroller and you can't edit it. Well, what we've done here is this is a workaround that allows you to edit those lists. If you come in here and add a new record, and then you put in here, say, what you want to put in there, you go up to this field up here and say, for example, I want manager. I could type in manager, and then it's added to the drop-down list. If I go back to booking, it's going to show me the list of items. But if I want to edit one in here, say like I wanted to edit reservation clerk, I would click it, it'd bring it up to the top, and I could edit it. Now, once you start using these fields in the actual application, it's a good idea, if not almost necessary, to not change these once you start using them, because once they are used and they're used in the list, it gets confusing to the people that are using it if it's not there anymore, if you've changed it. So it's best to just add another new record line item in the row if you're going to add additional things like a name or something like an office manager or a different kind of position that's actually working these as far as the employee. So let's go back into the booking area. That completes this area in here. The next thing I want to cover before we go to the tabs, you've already seen the navigation, and I'm going to be covering that in a second video where I'm going to show you also the do action information that is on each screen. But let's go down and look at the customer service information. What I'm going to show you when I click in here is you're going to see an area where they have a portal. Now a portal is a place where you have individual records in a row, as opposed to when you come over here where you have individual fields. This is a portal, it's a multi-line entry area, and this is an information area where you have fixed information and it doesn't change. If you're going to do a search in the application and you go up to the do action and you start a search by saying start search, this information, this field, all these fields rotate the screen. In fact, let's just do it so you can see it. I'll say start a search, and if you're on the iPad, it'll look like the screen flips over, and then what it'll do is it'll put a magnifying glass. This is normally, it'll put a magnifying glass in here, and what you would do is add the data to which you're looking for people. In this case, if I'm looking for Ben Franklin, I can type in Ben, and I don't even have to put it in capitals or anything, and I can just say that. But I can also add additional fields. Like if I wanted every Ben in a certain city, I could put in the Ben and the city name, or in a zip code, all the Bens in a zip code. Or I could put say something, it's a company and there's a number of Bens there. I can put in the company name where there's a number of Bens here, but I only want the specific company, or the city for that company. So you can bring it down to whatever you need to. Now be aware, you cannot use a multi-line portal in a search. It has to go to the individual record. And there has to be data in the record in order to go there. When you tap on the arrow here, it will take you to that portal record. Once you're in the portal records, then you can go ahead and do a search from those records. While we're in here, I'll show you down at the bottom of the screen when you're actually editing or adding data to a screen, this pop-up area, which is standard pretty much for the late model iPads and iPhones, well, as you are adding information, it'll give you some options. For example, I put Ben, it's got benefits, which is an option, or Ben just by Ben itself, or capital Ben. And then another thing, this is true for all the records in the application. This target right here, if you click on it, it's going to show you the number of records, that are actually in the found set. What is a found set? That's the current records that can be viewed in the amount of records that are actually available. If you have records that are not currently shown in these areas, then there will be omitted records. And say, for example, there's 4 here, well, then there would be 2 here. And then if you're looking at this record here, I'm on the second record of 6 in the sorted set, and there's 6 total records. If I wanted to show all the records, this would be highlighted if I had less than the amount of the full amount in the set. Or if I wanted to show omitted, I could flip it and show only the omitted. Or I could omit a record by just having one field highlighted and clicking omitted. Now these are in gray right now, which means they cannot be used unless they're in dark. The next thing over here is you have previous and next, where you can go between the record fields within the application as you're looking at it, or you can go to the top most record field by clicking this here. Over here, the plus and minus are not used. These are delete a record and add a record. This is not appropriate for this application because all the buttons and stuff that you would use in the application are included right in the application, and you don't need to go outside the application to add or reduce those number of records. Okay, so we're in here and we put in Ben. Let's finish the find. Go up to the do action and say perform the search. It flips over and you can see now that it says, well, there's no Ben. Well, that's kind of odd, and I'm not sure exactly why it's doing that, but there's no odd. Well, look at over here. What we've got is somehow there was a Ben in there and it wasn't found. There was a Ben and another Ben. What happens is it says either modify it or cancel. In this case, I'm just going to say cancel to show you that it brings back the record. And if I tap on here, and you can see in here it says number 2800, there was actually a record in here that was probably not sorted correctly or was added by somebody in an earlier version of this application. It needs to be deleted. So let's show how it's deleted. Now you can use this in a deletion if you highlight the field and come down here and click the minus. In this case, you can see it's not going to allow you to do that because this field in this record is not going to be allowed to be deleted. So what you can do is you can use this record. And how do you do that? You can put the next record information for the next client that you want to put in there. You can go and put it in there. Now what I'm going to do to solve this little issue is I will be erasing all the records and setting this whole application back to the first record that's added. When you come into the application, you're not going to see any records, and you'll have to say add a new record to start the whole process of adding data. Now in that same note, when you do that, when you're adding a new record, this is called a parent record. The subordinate records would be things like portals where there's portal data, or billing records where there's billing data, or payment record where there's payment data. This information is added and they are child records to the parent record, which is the primary record that we have right here. So if I go back over here and look, this is the primary record, and what I would be doing in this case was making sure that the information that's in here is complete for the person that I'm working with, and then I would be able to use it in the calendar to set up appointments and so forth. Once you have this information in here and it's available, then when we go back into the main calendar by clicking here, it'll make that person's information available for a record. So if I went in here and clicked on this record and I wanted to edit this or change it, for example, in this case it says Mary Smith, which is inappropriate because the customer is Vaughn Clement. I'd come back in here, I'd fix that, and now it would be correct. And if I click off that, you can see that it brings back in the information. So now that we have the information in here, you'll notice now that the information individually that was done in the individual record is now shown in here, and you'll see that the person is Ben Franklin or whoever the person is. In this case, if I wanted to modify that, say I wanted to have in there, say first person, you'll see now that first person is in here, so I've updated it. And you can edit in here and add edited information that will help to complete the information that is in this area. You can also change the service status to whatever it is. In this case, they all said service complete. But if I go in here and look, I have a lot of different things I can put in there as far as where is the status for the current record. If you change it here, it now changes it back in the customer record. If I change the time for the appointment from here, it's going to change it there. Make sure that these will match. For example, if you're putting the time up here on the calendar, you want to make sure that the time for that particular appointment is correct for the date that you're actually working with. In this case, if the date is incorrect, you can always go in there and you can change the date to be correct according to the information that's up above, where April 24th is the actual date, and that's the date we're going to use. So we're going to insert that, and you can see that it changed it to April 24th. So that's what now the information is in there, and that is the current date, the earliest date now. These are all previous years, and this was test information that was done on an older version of this application. Okay, so now we've covered a lot of different things. The main reason for this particular video help was to cover the adding of a person within a record that you need to use in the calendar if they're not already entered into the record area. And one of the other things that you want to make sure that you do in here is you're going through, make sure that it is for the appropriate date that you're working on when you add the data in the other field. If you change the dates in here when you're in the actual edit record, it's going to move this to a different screen for those dates that you actually added. So if you lose the location where this is, or you may want to move it to a different date, you can go ahead and do that. Now, what you should do is, say for example, this person did not show up and they called for a reason that's acceptable, that they didn't show up for their appointment, and they became a person over here in the where it says that they've the appointment was expired. You can always click over here and go back in and reassign a date that will fit the schedule for a reschedule. And sometimes what you want to do is go ahead and put them in the reschedule calendar. So I would have put them in the reschedule appointments. That way I know that this was rescheduled, and I have that information in the appropriate place within the rescheduled area. So if I go back down and I say, for example, where did that schedule go to? And I look in the reschedule, I'll see all the appointments that were changed from the original and rescheduled to a different date. This helps you to understand people that are late or don't show up or just forget about the appointment. You may want to be calling them the day before or even the morning of the appointment if it's later in the day to make sure they're going to show up. So those are just little things that will help you in the advanced calendar. And in this particular case, if I hit complete and then I go back out to the record, you're going to see that it disappears over here on the side and it draws a line through it saying that that was a completed task. So that's very important to understand that. Okay, this completes this video help. The next thing we're going to be doing in the video help, the next one we go through, is we're going to go back to the customer record. We're going to be covering navigation, the do action, and we're going to go through each one of the tabs and explain how they're used. Thank you for taking this video.